Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today it's my number 9 team in my 2025 NFL Deep Dive Series, the San Francisco 49ers. Make sure to comment, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. The 49ers are the one team in the NFL right now that is probably the biggest wild card, and it's because of how just ridiculously injury prone they seem to be as a roster. And it's not even just injury prone, it's the best players on their team. You know, whether it be Deebo Samuel, who they just traded to Washington, whether it's Brandon Ayuk, who's not going to play the first third of the season, maybe first quarter of the season from the looks of it, whether it's Christian McCaffrey, who's probably the worst case of this issue, where you just don't know what you're going to get. You're either getting the best running back in the league or you're getting nothing at all. It's a frustrating process, and that's why the 49ers, despite their record last season, are coming in at this high of a ranking, because all these players are coming back. You would assume all the injured players are coming back. They've replaced Deebo Samuel there. The defense is coming back here. They did lose Travarius Ward. They did add some guys in the rookie class. They committed to that defense side of the ball in the rookie class, bringing back Robert Saleh as the defensive coordinator. So there's a lot positive going on here. It's just how this team navigates getting around all the injuries. They did not necessarily do a lot of favors for their running back room to accommodate Christian McCaffrey's injury history. They did get rid of Jordan Mason, sent him to Minnesota. So it's going to be, cross your fingers, close your eyes, hope for the best for the 49ers, as it's been for most years now. And I don't know that with this type of attitude that they have to have, and these expectations they almost are thrust upon them with the way they've decided to roster build, makes them a true contender. But the pressure to make sure that all the guys are in the right place, to make sure you don't overuse anybody, falls on the coaching staff, of course, the personnel groups. And Kyle Shanahan, he's the 8th ranked head coach that I have here. He does fall out of this top 5 just because of the performances in big games and sort of how this team has handled adversity over the last couple of seasons in particular. It hasn't been particularly great at that. They did come super close to winning a Super Bowl against Kansas City. To me, that's a game they should have won. And it was poor coaching, poor game planning, poor short-term game planning that led to that. Now, I think Shanahan, from the quality of his mind, how he executes his system on a week-to-week basis, I think he sets up a good enough scheme that makes the 49ers a formidable contender every year. It's a matter of how he's going to get over that hump and find himself in that area where he can be a Super Bowl winning head coach. We've seen coaches struggle with that in the past who have eventually gotten over it. Coaches like Andy Reid, for example, had the exact same sort of path and journey that we're seeing Kyle Shanahan on right now, where there was a lot of this talk about, okay, yeah, he's a great offensive mind. He does a great job making sure that the floor is really high on this team. Even when they're injured, they can still figure it out to a degree, but he can't win the big one. Andy Reid changed teams, went to Kansas City, got Patrick Mahomes, and now he's a Super Bowl winning coach. Is Kyle Shanahan lacking in that department, or is it just a personnel thing? Is he just missing that final piece of the roster? I don't know exactly what it could be, because if I had to pick somebody to come up with a game plan for one game, 1 week of the year, it would probably be Kyle Shanahan, at least from an offensive perspective. Especially because he does such a great job of keeping position coaches and rotating in his offensive coordinators that he keeps getting here, like Clay Kubiak, comes in 20th for me. It's an experience thing, it's an impact thing overall, but I just think that how much is he going to give away to an offensive coordinator for the offensive coordinator to have an impact? I don't think that's going to really happen. But he does a great job of incorporating all the offensive coaches, having some sense of continuity, even through some positional turnover. There's been a lot of different guys who have claim the offensive coordinator spot. You get the quarterback coaching position here. Guys leave with other coaches to go pursue other things and higher ranking positions, more intriguing roles in a team, perhaps. But I think Shanahan, from a leadership perspective, I do believe that his team and his coaching staff definitely respects it. I think that they're willing to play for him. That's why they're able to do so well. Now, when they picked up these major injuries, from a team-building personnel standpoint, I guess you can put this on John Lynch as well, but it does have to go on Shanahan because he has to be able to dial this stuff in and make sure that certain guys remain on the team and certain guys are signed to the team and that they're prepared for these injuries. They've lost some pretty key players and not really looked like they were all that prepared to live without them. From an execution standpoint, from just a preparation perspective, he's sort of lacked in that as well. I think last year they were really lacking in that. Jordan Mason came out, played great. He was the best replacement level guy that they had, and then they didn't keep him. And it's not like he went to go get a starting job somewhere else. He just went for like a nothing pick that they acquired, and now he's in the exact same offense and really the exact same situation out in Minnesota. And now you're just banking on that running back that you pick up on day 3 every single year just working out the way that some of these others have. Or you just hope that Christian McCaffrey stays healthy. Then you got these contract issues with Brandon Ayuk because he feels he's not involved in the offense enough. And when he is involved, it's, well, I'm not getting paid enough then. How does Kyle Shanahan navigate that from a week-to-week game planning basis? Now he's got 5 weeks or so without Brandon Ayuk. So who's he gonna plug in to be the breakout star in the wide receiver room at that point? Is it first-round pick Ricky Pearsall? Is it Juwan Jennings who's gonna keep growing there? Is it Tariq Owens? Maybe? I don't know if he makes the team. Because it can't just be George Kittle. So he's gonna have to really navigate this roster from the offensive side in particular in order to make sure that they don't end up in the situation they just were a year ago, where they're sort of hanging their quarterback out to dry and their offensive line out to dry because they just couldn't execute and their defense was being hung out to dry and the defense wasn't executing all that well. That's why you go and get Robert Saleh, who immediately comes in. He's my 3rd best defensive coordinator right out the gate. Say what you want about his time with the Jets. As a head coach, incredibly average. Lost the locker room, of course. But that Jets defense was pretty damn good for some of those years. Pretty damn formidable. He knows his defense. Now he can settle back into being just a defensive guy, not having to worry about personalities on the offensive side of the ball, not having to really worry about the front office and appeasing them. He can just focus on week-to-week defense, and this is how you get back to what made the 49ers true Super Bowl contenders every year, had them ranked in the top 5 by a lot of people, is by having that defense. And Saleh he gets it. He's a player's coach. He's not afraid to surround himself with good defensive minds. That's why Gus Bradley's there. Getting all that experience, absorbing a new perspective perhaps, which I think you can see a lot from great minds on either side of the ball is there, especially when they go back to being coordinators. You come out with a different perspective. You add new minds in there and you adjust your scheme. You refine it. You look at it from a perspective that maybe you didn't look at it from before. So we'll see how Saleh does that. I think that's why you bring in Gus Bradley, is to do that. But we've seen that from guys like Raheem Morris. We've seen that from Vance Joseph. Relatively successful defensive coordinator jobs. Raheem Morris as a head coach, again, yet to be seen. But I think Saleh, he's putting himself in a position where maybe he'll be sought after again. It's very tough for defensive coordinators to get that second chance if the first time doesn't go very well and is seen as a giant freaking burnout. But I think he could be blessed with the opportunity to just be Shanahan's permanent defensive coordinator. There's a world where that is the case and teams just kind of don't want to touch him. I don't know that he won't get a second chance if this defense immediately starts performing well. They committed so much of their draft to the defense. You could see the immediate impact and influence that Robert Saleh had over the team building aspect that they had just this offseason. And when we get to the defensive side, you'll see a lot of new faces, a lot of draft capital used on really getting that defense back to where it was when he left. Because he probably walked back into this locker room and looked at the roster and went, what the hell did you guys do to my defense? From a personnel standpoint, you look at it and you go, okay, they got Bosa still. They still got Fred Warner. And that's it. So much roster turnover since the time he was there. So we'll see how he responds to that. I think from a strategic standpoint, though, he knows how to use the stars on this defense. And he showed that he's able to develop players, both as a defensive coordinator, as a head coach, on at least the defensive side of the ball. So I'm not overly worried about that either. And I think that this is going to really help with the roster turnover that they've had. A lot of the young players coming in, a lot of inexperienced guys. They tried to get younger, clearly, especially on defense. So from a strategic standpoint, you got the two bookends now really figured out offensively and defensively. So I anticipate them to be in games that they probably shouldn't be in against significantly better teams, even though there's not that many. And I do anticipate them to just completely outclass a lot of the lower end teams where it'll look completely effortless just from a scheme perspective, where they're going to dominate a lot of teams, I think, this year just with the staff alone, because they're going to just be constantly putting their guys in the most advantageous situations. They're going to be prepared on both sides of the ball like they were back when they had that first Super Bowl run when Saleh was the defensive coordinator. I think you're getting yourself back to that. And now that you got certain other positions in place, you can really start to pick apart the roster. And you're going to be able to see now with the new perspective of Saleh, which is not really a new one, it's a continuous one. But maybe Clay Kubiak can kick in and a little bit of added stuff here, the way Gus Bradley would for the defense. So from a staff perspective, they've pretty much got this one nailed down. It's a really good looking group here. This is usually the time where a YouTube guy will come in and hit you with an ad break, but I don't have ads yet because I don't have enough subscribers, so that's why I need you, if you haven't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button and hit the thumbs up to push it out to more people so that maybe they'll subscribe too, and then I can make lots of money. Thank you. Back to the roster. The quarterback, Brock Purdy, comes in. He gets an A9. He's just like on the fringe of that top 10 for me. Now, this really is, I don't know that he's going to be any better than this in terms of how he could be perceived, because it's just from a skill set perspective. Like, he doesn't have the giant arm like Mahomes. He doesn't have the mobility like Josh Allen. He just doesn't have any of that stuff. You look at his big time throws, only 15, 17 turnover worthy plays. He doesn't execute the deep ball like truly elite, but he's a good play action quarterback. He's really great in the intermediate areas. That's where you can use Juwan Jennings in the slot, where you use George Kittle a lot. And it's not necessarily pushing the ball down the field because his arm strength isn't necessarily a feature of his. His features are really being accurate in the intermediate areas, being patient enough to let those intermediate routes develop and picking apart where the blitz is going to go, where that opens things up. He's not that bad against pressure, but I just think he does have a ceiling for sure. He's got a ceiling that's just not as high as others. Like, you see, there's other quarterbacks that have ranked lower than him that I think definitely have the potential to be better quarterbacks than what he's doing right now. I don't know that he's going to ever be looked at as a top 5 quarterback. Now, will he have top 5 quarterback performances a couple weeks out of the year? Yes, but he's also going to look like the 13th or 14th best quarterback as well in certain weeks where you're going to need a big play and he might not be able to deliver it for you. It's this window of where his ceiling and his floor is. It's actually pretty tight For me, it's somewhere like he's 9 to 10th because of his grade of 89. That's where I feel like he's going to fall in this year. But there'll be certain situations where he'll just fall a couple spots below that. But he's not going to be somebody that's going to take over a game and win you the game. He's going to be somebody that's going to make smart decisions, that understands the scheme and how to play it, knows what Kyle Shanahan wants and expects, and is committed to the mental aspect of the game where his strengths are to overcome some of the physical deficiencies that Brock Purdy's going to have on a week-to-week basis. Now, here's the issue that the 49ers have seemingly run into quite a bit during the Shanahan era in particular, is that when you get down in a game, do you have the guy behind center to bring you back? That's going to march you down the field, that's going to make plays, extend plays in the pocket, escape, make the right pre-snap adjustments every single time. There's a special class of people that can do that. I don't know that Brock Purdy's in that group yet. I don't know that he can be in that group because of the lack of arm strength, because of the lack of like that true special upside. Now, I say that like I didn't just put him in the top 10 of quarterbacks in the league. I get that. I get how that can be a little confusing. But that's because I feel like Brock Purdy's going to give you a more positive performance than a negative one way more often. I think for every 4 or 5 good games he's going to have, that's when he'll have a stinker in there. He'll have one stinker for every 5 good games. And he'll throw a great game in there. He'll throw a great game when he's at about 300 yards. But he's going to be mostly a 220-yard passing quarterback who will have maybe 25 passing touchdowns in the season, who's going to just not turn the ball over all that much. He won't get sacked a lot. He understands where his checks are. He knows when to alert to his hot receiver. His pre-snap adjustments are always strong. He's always on the same page with his talent, with the receivers, with the tight end receivers, even down the depth chart. I think you see that. He has a really good rapport with even guys who don't get as much playing time, who aren't on the field. You know, any quarterback can be on par with their number 1 and number 2 targets on a week-to-week basis. But you can really see in some of the ways that Kyle Shanahan's allowed to deploy some of those like backup players, those guys who only come in for a couple snaps a game. He's able to deploy them with more nuance than other offenses can, because I think Brock Purdy does a great job of being on the same page with those guys as well. So you'll see the option routes. He knows exactly where he needs to be. He knows exactly where that guy's going to go. The timing is always very good with these guys, with every single one of his receivers. That's the one thing that Brock Purdy does have. He's always playing on time. He understands the different nuances of every single player out there. So he knows the Brandon Ayuk and Jennings and Kittle and Pearsall, all these different things that they have about their game, like where they're going to be, how many strides do they usually take to get to a certain spot. When they get to a certain spot, do they sit? Will they keep going? Are they going to try and double move it? He knows all that stuff. So that allows him to execute at a really high level. But again, he's not going to just execute at a level where he's going to just launch the ball down the field the way you'll see Josh Allen do it. It'll be a monster play. Much more methodical, much more patient, and it's somebody who you would rather be in 4-minute drill than 2-minute drill. And that's not always necessarily true for every top quarterback. There's a lot of top quarterbacks in the league, like Lamar, even Joe Burrow, where 2-minute drill is where they live. Other quarterbacks, it's like 4 minutes. Man, 4 minutes might be just a little too much too meandering for them in that pressure situation, you know, like to get the timing of being able to kill enough clock and get enough yards and all that. Brock Purdy is perfect in the 4-minute drill for me.
as opposed to a 2-minute drill. So you want to get into that situation more often than not when you're trying to get a score late in a quarter or late in a game. You want to be in that like 3.5 to 4 minute range. If you get closer to that 2 minutes, like on 2.5 minutes to a minute 45, that's when I sort of go, the 49ers don't have it. They ain't going to get this one. And it's because of the ceiling. But the floor raises you up so much. He's able to pick defenses apart. He'll find the soft parts of the zone that they're playing these late in games like that and just march you down the field 7 to 8 yards at a time, finding the right guy every time, not putting the ball in harm's way in those situations. Most of the time he's putting the ball in harm's way, it's because he's trying to force the ball down the field into an area that his arm strength just doesn't allow him to do, or into tighter windows that the arm strength doesn't allow him to do. So it allows guys to sort of undercut his routes and forcing receivers to stop their feet, for example, and be a little bit more awkward in trying to make the catch. And there is that like sort of missing a couple of throws because his adjusted completion percentage is only 74, which means there's not a lot of drops going around here. So if he's throwing an incompletion, it's because he's probably just generally inaccurate. So there are deficiencies to his game. There's a lot of positives to his game, and I think that he's somebody who you comfortably play at quarterback all year, and you know what you're gonna get, and you sort of just rely on the players surrounding him to step up and make big plays to then win you the games in the end. So this weapons group, they come in at 11th. And that's because I kind of had to nerf Brandon Ayuk's grade a bit, coming in at 85, which, maybe people think that that's relatively very accurate for him. To me, I feel like he's probably more of like an 88, 89 quality if he was playing all year, but he's missing at least 5 games this year, maybe 6 or something like that. It's 5 or 6, I think, was the guarantee. So it's going to be a lot on Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall and Demarcus Robinson and Russell Gage and Trent Taylor when he gets healthy, hopefully. And you got Tariq Owens, who, I'm telling you, T.O.'s kid. Put him in. I'm telling you, put him in. It's going to work. I promise. But it's going to fall on those guys to really work that outside. Juwan Jennings will probably have to play a lot more outside wide receiver than he usually likes to, while Brandon Ayuk is on the mend. But when Ayuk comes in, he didn't have a healthy season last year, was terrible in the deep routes, but executed really well in the intermediates, which is where Brock Purdy executes very well. There's just a lot of concern about his health and his attitude. He had 3 drops on 45 targets, which isn't great. I'd like to see him clean that up. But you wonder how healthy he truly was last year. You wonder how much was being let on, how much he was playing through an injury maybe, and then how much it was hankering him when he was trying to play through it. Was he overpaid? Probably. Is him asking for more money now a little audacious? Perhaps. Because he didn't exactly light the world on fire the last couple of years, especially not last year. But he kind of knows he's got them over the barrel here a bit, so I know that he's going to use that card for as long as he can use it, because I don't think his trade value is even that high. So I think he kind of has the leverage in this negotiation here with how he wants to just expand his guaranteed money or whatever the issue may be with him. On top of him being hurt, he's one of the few guys who can be hurt and not be playing for the first month of the year and have all this leverage over an organization to get more money. Especially because they trade away Debo. You traded away Debo before you knew this was going to happen. Probably a mistake. But, I know they had to make a decision there, and that's fine. Debo's not exactly Mr. Health anyway. So maybe them getting more opportunities for someone like Ricky Pearsall or Juwan Jennings, or like someone like a really solid veteran, like a really solid wide receiver 4, borderline wide receiver 3 like Demarcus Robinson, who like has sneaky great games all the time. Maybe those guys getting more involved is much better for your team. Maybe committing more to Christian McCaffrey in the passing game is much better. You split him out as a slot receiver. Split him out wide. Let him run some routes. Great route runner. I remember when he first came into the league, there was talks of him being a receiver. So it's not like you don't have like a great receiving option out of the backfield either. And it allows Brock Purdy to play well within his game. You get to play action screens. You know, him being able to go through his progressions with all these different guys. That's another thing that we can really potentially see here is when a top wide receiver goes down. And then you got these all like good, but not great guys playing on the outside and the slot and all that. The quarterback is now not so like, oh, I gotta get this guy involved X amount of times a game. It opens up opportunities for these guys to have breakout performances. Now, on a consistent basis, it won't be the case because it'll truly be, you know, if the person's truly open that game, if they're truly winning at the line of scrimmage. The only one that he'd be, in the first couple of weeks, that he'd be purposely looking to get involved in the offense from a passing perspective is George Kittle. But Kittle's such a team player. He's such a great locker room guy that if he ran the ball 50 times in a game, Kittle would just be excited that he gets a chance to block. You know, but he still had almost 80 catches last year, over 1,000 yards, almost 10 touchdowns, only 2 drops, 12 successful contested catches, almost 71%. Just great at all levels of the field. He understands leverage. He knows how to beat safeties and linebackers when he splits out in the slot, and he's got the size advantage over, you know, whoever the nickel slot corner is at that point in time. He knows how to use his size and his body to his advantage. He's truly, if he's not the best tight end, he's top 2. It's hard to figure out at this point who's a better tight end than him, especially from a complete game perspective. You get so many tight ends in the league now that are great receivers, but they're not great blockers, or they don't have like that physicality to them. The thing about Kittle is that he might be one of the best blocking tight ends in the league as well, because he has so much. He just has fun with the physicality, like just destroying a defensive end and breaking off in a zone run, wide zone run, getting out there on a safety or a nickel, or cutting off the linebacker and just driving the guy into the ground. We've seen highlights of that with him laughing doing the blocking and stuff. So he's the exact guy that this offense needs, because he can truly play 3 downs and he can truly be a traditional tight end in terms of his alignment, where he's the 6th offensive lineman in run plays, and he's a true like number 1 quality receiving threat in the passing game. That's impossible to cover. He's faster than all the guys that cover him. He's usually bigger than them all too. He gets up on a linebacker. Linebackers are too slow. Safeties are too small. It's a matchup nightmare. And as long as he stays healthy, which, you know, as you put more tread on the tires, you know, he hasn't been perfectly healthy either throughout his career. Put more miles on that car, eventually it'll be an issue. So you maybe don't want to just overly use him either. But because he lacks that ego where you'll see guys complain about not getting the ball enough. I don't see that in George Kittle's future at all. That just doesn't seem like him. So it will open up opportunities for other guys, especially probably Juwan Jennings, who will be in that slot opposite him. You get Kittle as the inline tight end. You stack a slot on that side as well, like Juwan Jennings. Now the team has to pick. Now you're going to hit some crossing routes there. You know, you'll hit the old scissor route concept between the two of them. And you're going to confuse some safeties. And then it's an easy read at that point for Brock Purdy. It's you throw it to the opposite side of where the safety went. And they could execute a lot of positive pass plays by doing that. There's not a lot of depth, though, as you can see. So when Ayuk is out, you're really dealing with Jennings, Pearsall, Robinson, and Kittle. After that, you need somebody to step up, and they're, as much as I said Tariq Owens or Russell Gage or whatever, there's still, you can't rely on that being the case. So you have to come up with, basically I would say you have to come up with packages for each of these individual players so you don't overuse them, but you have to commit basically your entire passing game around them. And Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey are probably the three guys you do it with. You hope that Ricky Pearsall can, after, getting shot last year however many times, and you just hope that he can live up to that first round pick that you used on him, even though he probably was overdrafted. He's definitely that guy that can make those circus catches in tough situations. If Brock Purdy is putting it into a tight window in the short to intermediate areas, Pearsall is going to be sure-handed to come up with that. It's just getting confidence at the pro level, I think. So there is the potential there. It's just potential doesn't buy the groceries. You got to actually do it. But I think it's a huge opportunity in this first month. I think we're going to know everything that we need to know about Ricky Pearsall and really where his trajectory is going during this first part of the season when Brandon Ayuk is out. If he kind of just falls behind the scenes, then I think that you may be looking at maybe him just not being that guy that they were hoping he would be. But if he comes out, has, finishes those 6 games with over 400 yards and over 25 catches, then hey, maybe you do got a star in your hand. So there's potential there for sure. If McCaffrey goes down, you kind of really lose the receiving back aspect of your game. If Kittle goes down, you lose your receiving tight end. So that's the real points of contention here. They didn't really do a great job of maintaining the depth at those positions. Even though they bring in Luke Farrell and Jordan James, 2 new names to this roster, that makes me nervous. That part does make me nervous because you lose those 2 guys. Now you're looking at you're a bottom 5 weapons group at that point if you lose those 2 guys. And it's not out of the question that there could be a situation this year where Ayuk, Kittle, and McCaffrey aren't playing. So that could be a real issue that they need to figure out, this depth aspect of their roster from a weapons perspective sooner rather than later. Especially for the running back room where they come in 15th to 18th. And even though Christian McCaffrey gets a 90 grade from me, they still are like a middle of the pack running back room because how do you trust him to stay healthy? I don't know. I don't know how you can trust him to stay healthy. When he's going to play, he's going to be a high-level guy, but you have to take into account what Jordan James is going to be as a player, what Isaac Guerrero is going to be as a player, what Jeff Wilson is going to be as a player, bringing these guys in, and how it's going to lower the overall quality of your running back room. Because you get McCaffrey, look at McCaffrey last year, he only carried the ball less than 50 times. 4 yards a carry, 200 yards, no touchdowns, had a fumble. Now, when he's healthy, he's as good as any running back in the league. And when he played a full season for San Francisco, you saw that. You saw the type of impact that he can have on the roster, that he can have on the offense in general, how it opens up opportunities for everybody else. Because he does have the ability to take those toss plays to the outside with great speed. He is able to run between the tackles and make guys miss in the hole. He's able to hit a second gear in the open field to outrun defensive backs. He still has all those aspects to his game. He just is made of chandelier glass. And that hurts. That hurts the roster, and it hurts what you can project from him. It hurts what you can project from this team's production level. And you want to build an offense around him. You want to build a lot of your offense around him because he's special. But you can't keep committing so much of your energy to him if he's not going to be on the field. That's a huge problem, is that he just wouldn't be on the field. And now you have all this time, all this effort, all this strategy, all this scheme dedicated to nothing. And then having to shift gears, and that's where you see the struggles, especially the ones they had last year. so much of their offense was dialed in around him. But that's why Jordan Mason is able to come out, have a really good performance, get some quality yards, some quality carries, but just not be that game breaker that scheme was designed for him to be, because he couldn't live up to it. And I don't know that Jordan James can live up to it. As highly graded as I have Jordan James coming in as just a straight up running back, especially in this offense, I think it fits him really well. I'm just not sure that he's any better than what Jordan Mason's going to be, or what Jordan Mason would be here in this role. I think Jordan Mason would arguably maybe be better. Not because he's more talented or anything like that, but just because from a continuity perspective. So Isaac Guerrero is there. He's kind of injured right now too. So is he another injury-prone running back that you've picked up? Jeff Wilson's there. He's just sort of a familiar face. Just need to get a familiar face in there, it seems. But this is the wild card group. This makes or breaks the offense, really, especially a Shanahan offense. This makes or breaks it. How well does the running back execute on a drive-to-drive basis? How much can you dedicate to one guy in the backfield? And how well-rounded is the running back? So if you don't get a well-rounded back going, Jordan James struggles in the receiving game, you got problems if Christian McCaffrey just keeps getting hurt. What they are going to have going for them is the offensive line. At the very least, from a run blocking perspective, they're my sixth best run blocking group. 20th in pass blocking, though. I think the interior of the offensive line, they're just not great pass blockers. I think Brendel and Bart, you're going to see them mostly working the double teams together. Colton McKivitz is a serviceable right tackle in both aspects of the game. I think the real stars are the left tackle and the right guard. You start with Trent Williams, who's just been fantastic for so long. Great pass pro. Not the best, but great. 381 snaps, gave up 17 pressures. That's a little much. It's a little much. Only one of them were sacks, so shout out to Brock Purdy for being able to navigate the pocket, get the ball out. Took 5 penalties. That's a little much for only 381 pass snaps. But he's another guy who just, you hope, can stay healthy. And if he does stay healthy, then perfect. If he does go down like so many other guys on this roster could, then you obviously have your concerns in that. I don't know how much pause you take. Do you take the same amount of pause with him as you do with Christian McCaffrey? It's tough because from a run blocking perspective, ironically, this is the worst he's been in his career probably. He's an 88 grade. Like, truly one of the great run blocking tackles in the entire league. And he fits this offense so well. The Shanahan zone blocking, gets an A grade for zone blocking. Only ran 22% gap, was incredibly average. But 268 snaps in the run game. Again, just not taking on all the snaps that he would be taking on if he was just 100% healthy and dialed in and not missing snaps, not missing games, not missing drives. Now, is that just sort of a product of just how fast and athletic and physical he plays all at one time? Could be. But everyone's got to play that way. So you do draw your concerns here. Because when he does play, high quality player. One of the best at his position, probably the most well-rounded at his position. But you're only getting 268 snaps there out of him. You're only getting 381 pass blocking snaps. It's not enough. It's just not enough. And I know people are talking about him. He was washed years ago. And he still stepped up here for the 49ers in fantastic ways. very much a franchise tackle. You're just concerned about his health. They don't have anyone to replace him. Dillard and Spencer Burford ain't it. Andre Dillard ain't going to replace. So you're in the same position really with your tackles as you are with the running back room, where if you're healthy, you got one of the best groups in the entire league. If you're not, it could be a bit of a disaster. Now, second-year guard Dominic Purdy, he was really, really surprising. He was sort of like, he was this player that you kind of went, was it a reach to pick him? And then he just won a starting job, and 656 pass snaps later, only 3 sacks given up. Took 7 penalties, but, you're a rookie. He's a rookie. Of course he's going to take some penalties. He's going up there against monsters and athletic beasts. Kobe Turner. He's going up against Kobe Turner. He's going up against friggin' Leonard Williams and stuff. So, he's playing some really great interior defensive linemen just within his division and really holding his own, especially in the run game. In the run game, he came out, he just executed, man. He executed so well. He fit into that scheme and that system like a glove. You knew you were running to that right side of the field. Purdy was going to open up that hole for you. He was going to get to the second level exactly when he needed to get to it. He was going to come off a double team at the perfect moment. He was going to execute the double team at the perfect moment. He was going to shift to the other side. He got it. It clicked for him immediately in the system, and that's shout out to Shanahan for the system. Shout out to the offensive line coach for getting him up to speed and ready, and Dominic Purdy showing that he's got the mental capacity to immediately adapt to the pro game in that sense. Now, there is the whole second-year jitters that you can sometimes get out of guys, the sophomore slump, as they call it. But with this quality, if he gives you 85% of what he did just last year, you're still getting a great quality starting guard who has real Pro Bowl potential. I would even put Dominic Purdy in the conversation for that, all-pro potential for this year. Because you look at some of the other guards in the league, it's he's a really good blocking guard. There's only a couple guards that are probably better than him as a run blocker, like Chris Lidstrom, guys like that. If he improves it, if he maintains his run blocking ability, improves as a pass protector, that could be something. Now, how often is he going to be working on an island compared to Ben Barch on the opposite side? Probably way more often, because Ben Barch is just replacement level as it comes. And personally, I would have Nick Zakelj as the starter. I do grade him higher than Ben Barch, but I think Ben Barch, from a floor perspective, I guess, they view him as being better. Maybe they view him as being a better scheme fit. Maybe they like him better on the left side as opposed to Zakelj on the right side. There's enough there that I could see Ben Barch being the starter in that situation. But I do think that if they don't have a true open competition, they could be selling themselves a little bit short in what they could be as an offensive line. Now, if Zakelj does start, maybe they go to the 5th best run blocking group and the 18th best pass blocking group. Maybe it's not that significant of a jump. But then you got Connor Colby, the rookie, who, from a run blocking perspective, I think he can be sneaky good. I think that he could come in and be the left guard version of what you got from Dominic Purdy last year. If it all clicks for him, he's coming in with what I would anticipate a pretty similar profile. So I would look for him to, how he works through the rest of camp, the rest of August, how comfortable they are with the offensive line. Because they got 4 quality starters here, dare say high-end starters. Like Jake Brendel's a run blocker, is a high-end run blocking center. He just really stinks in pass protection. So, maybe understanding the system a little bit more, getting on the same page with Brock Purdy a little bit more, getting better performances out of the guards. So he is more clear on where the double team has to go, understanding the shifts of it, the shifts and calling the right shift and getting to the right place and coming off a double team maybe to pick up a blitzing linebacker that on a delayed blitz. He could do all those things a little bit better. He can probably do all those things way better. So we'll see how much of that he has in his game, how much development he still has in him to get there. But I think they hover around that like top 10 offensive line designation. So it's hard to complain too much about what they have going on here, because if they got to close out a game, they're going to close it out here with this run blocking talent for sure. From the pass blocking perspective, luckily Brock Purdy's not a guy who executes the deep ball that much, so he's not hanging onto the ball so much. He's not hanging onto the ball for a long time the way you would see Patrick Mahomes do it. So it does make their job easier in that sense. However, because I think teams will know that Brock Purdy doesn't have like this overly great game-breaking ability, that they maybe see more blitzes, more stunts and stuff. So they got to be a little bit more on top of that aspect in order to maintain their pass blocking ability and their pass blocking grade, because they could get caught up in that situation where they get a lot of exotic looks and post-snap movement from linebackers and defensive linemen just to try and confuse the pass blocking aspect, knowing that Brock Purdy's not somebody who's going to just break a pocket every single play like Lamar would, or is going to just be able to hang in that pocket, navigate it as great as Joe Burrow would. Overall, it's my 10th ranked offense. 9th pass offense, 13th ranked rush offense, 20th offensive coordinator, but they're a top 10 offense in the league. They'll execute, they'll get yards, they'll score when they need to score. They'll mostly out-strategize the opposing defense and get done what needs to get done. They just, from a true high upside perspective, I do have concerns about if they fall behind in a game is all.
Now let's go to the defensive side of the ball, and they're running it back, so to speak, with Robert Saleh's return as a defensive coordinator, trying to get back to that Super Bowl form, and it starts with the defensive line.
Nick Bosa is still the star. 93 pass, 89 against the run. They are overall 24th pass rush, though, and 16th in run defense, because after Bosa, it's a lot of just, what? I guess, ooh, don't know. We'll start with Bosa. 10 sacks last year, is 4th in win percentage. 15 quarterback hits, 44 hurries, 690 snaps. You'd like to see him get maybe 100 more snaps this upcoming season. Get those numbers up a little bit. But man, when he's on the field, from just a balanced play perspective, it's hard to find guys that are as balanced as him. You'll get guys that are great pass rushers like this, that hover around this 90 grade, but they don't deliver in the run game. But Bosa, you can just turn him on against anybody, and he's most likely going to beat that guy. He needs to be chipped at the line every time, no matter how good your left tackle is. Could be Andrew Thomas, could be Tristan Wirfs, don't matter. Charles Cross, don't matter. You gotta help out whoever he's lined up across from. Goes to the right side of the field. Now your right tackle is sort of in shambles now. Gonna go one-on-one with him, like TJ Watt. And frankly, TJ Watt's really probably the only one that comes to mind that's even remotely close to the 3-down player that Bosa is. And Bosa's got years left on him. He's still very young. That's the thing about Bosa. Bosa came into the league, and because he was so good right away, I think it tricks people into thinking he's much older. But man, him and Robert Saleh clicked right away. So now you're putting them back together, and you're going to execute. You're going to really throw it back to when Bosa was really at his best, which was with Robert Saleh. And maybe there's an extra gear that he could hit, paired up with Saleh again, that can really get him to that next level. Even from a run protection, run defense standpoint, he's a really sure tackler, considering. He can force fumbles. He's very aggressive at the ball. In fact, one forced fumble is kind of low for him, to be honest, from last year. But a pure starting quality edge, all 3 downs. You're going to be hard pressed to find anyone better than him, more dangerous than him. He's somebody that you have to identify pre-snap. He's someone that you have to make sure you have a plan for to double team. He has to be somebody that the running back that stays in the backfield needs to identify where he's at and almost cheat to his side. Even if his responsibility is in between the A gap and the B gap, he needs to be there to work in the C gap for when Bosa inevitably beats the tackle, which is going to be more often than not. Where this concern now comes for this entire group and what really drags it down is who else you got? You got rotational pieces for sure. Pure passing situations, it's going to be Bosa and Bryce Huff probably. You can mix in Ukwa Yononu. You can mix in Yetur Gross-Matos, so they brought in free agency. Maybe you mix in Robert Beal. But that's why I use a top 10 pick on Mykel Williams, who we'll get to. But then from an interior perspective, you got Jordan Elliott, you got Kevin Givens, you got Evan Anderson, guys with experience, but you also threw 2 draft picks at the interior. One for Alfred Collins, who probably going to get some starting reps here. From a pass rush perspective, playing like a more like nose tackle type position. He did play really across the entire defensive line, interior defensive line for Texas last year. Snap count was really spread out, surprisingly. 115 A gap, 227 B gap, 106 over the tackle. So from 4I to 0 tech, he played it all. And I think he played it pretty well, just from a pass rush perspective. He just wasn't anything remotely special. Now, working on double teams a lot, you're going to have low numbers. It's going to be tough to win in those situations. I just don't know that he's somebody who I would count on being a great winner from the interior, because he was 141st in college football last year. Only 15 pressures on 465 snaps. So we'll see. That's like nose tackle numbers. So we'll see if he just ends up settling in as like a pure nose tackle. From a run protection perspective, great space eater, understands his role. He gets that. He wraps his arms around you, he's bringing you down. A less than 2% missed tackle rate is amazing. That's a great number. Now, how he executed in those short to go situations was not all that great. He was 106th in stop percentage amongst interior defensive linemen last year in the NCAA. That's not great. That number needs to improve drastically, because especially if you're going to be playing, you're not going to have like a set role, I don't think, because he does walk around the interior defensive line. I think they'll do a lot of the same with him. He's going to need to work those matchups a lot better, because it seemed with Alfred Collins that if he wasn't winning right away, then he was kind of lost, right? Now, we saw very similar situations with Mason Graham, who went in the first round, top 5, to the Cleveland Browns, where in a pass rush perspective, he didn't win right off the gate. He wasn't getting to the quarterback in pass rush. Alfred Collins has a lot of that going on as well from both perspectives, both rush defense and pass rush. So we'll see how he develops further with that. But there's another rookie out there they invested a top 10 pick in. It's Mykel Williams from Georgia. He's not somebody who's coming in as this great pass rusher right away. He's going to be like this early down guy to start his career, who you hope to develop because so much attention is going to be given to Bosa. You can probably play him at the same time as Bosa and Bryce Huff, so he'll be the third most concerned player by the offense at best. Maybe that helps him. Maybe that helps him develop in that sense. But just when he went in the top 10, I went like, they took him for his length. He had tremendous length. He has tremendous length. They clearly took him for his length. And they took him for what they knew his floor was, which was he was at least going to be a solid early down run defending defensive end / outside linebacker. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's really what he brings. Is that. Really good at setting an edge. really good at the point of attack, really good at shedding run blockers, really good at identifying the run blockers coming. The Georgia defense coached him up really well in that sense. It's just from a pass rush perspective, he doesn't have too many pass rush moves at all. His length, he doesn't execute it very well in pass rush. He actually executes it in a way where it becomes a detriment to him. But I think Robert Saleh and John Lynch, they probably see these physical traits that he has, and Robert Saleh goes, I can coach that out of him. And that's where I think the upside for him really comes into play. And I think eventually, I think by the end of the year, we'll see a much better version of Michael Williams from a pass rush perspective than we do right now at the beginning of the year. I think the growing pains are going to be really brutal. So I wonder how many opportunities he's going to get. How much are they going to allow him to be brutal? Because he's not all that much better than Bryce Huff in run defense that I can project coming in. And Bryce Huff did have great years with the Jets, now reuniting with the coach that made him great in Robert Saleh, ironically. So there is something there where, okay, you can have a healthy rotation there, but I know Michael Collins is a top 10 pick, but so was Javon Kinlaw was a top 14 pick, and they ran him out of town. So, Jordan Elliott, I think, is the only other defensive lineman other than Bosa that really has his role carved out, because he's the only one who's really a capable 3-down defensive tackle with experience, smarts, all that from a floor perspective. There is a world where CJ West beats him out, and you got 3 starting rookies on the defensive line for a majority of the end of the season, particularly at the end of the season. Once West and Michael Williams figure out pass rushing perspectives, because they have solid foundations from a run defense perspective, and maybe this group gets a little bit better in run defense if CJ West gets more playing time than Alfred Collins does, but they lose more in pass rush. I think their ultimate focus is going to be the pass rush. So we'll see if Bryce Huff can get back to that level that he was right before he left the Jets to go to Philadelphia, where he was this breakout star for Saleh. I think that's half the reason why he's there, is because Saleh sees that in him. So maybe Michael Williams is just more of a contingency plan in case Bryce Huff doesn't work out, but it also gives Michael Williams a great opportunity to develop and to watch how it's done from great players like Bosa, and how a guy like Bryce Huff executes as a number 2 edge guy. There's so many advantages here to these young players coming in. So even though there's so many, and there's probably going to be more playing time given to rookies on this defensive line than most other teams would ever dream of doing, I think it opens up a world of opportunities for how great this defensive line could be at this time next year, more so than it is this time this year. Now we're taking a look at the linebackers, and wow. From a pass coverage perspective, they're the number 2 linebacking group. Run defense, because outside of having the best linebacker in the league in Fred Warner, comes in 90 pass coverage, 85 run defense. Just a phenomenal player. Just sideline to sideline speed, taking the right angle all the time, playing with the right aggression, great anticipation on, gap fulfillment. Should probably clean up the tackles a little bit. Had 98 tackles, had 11.9 missed tackle percentage last year. You would really like to see that get cleaned up. But he did force 4 fumbles. In the zone, he worked pretty well. He gave up 51 catches when targeted, but for only 400 yards. So he was keeping everything really in front of him. 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, less than 100 passer rating when targeted. And considering a majority of what a linebacker does is play in the zone, play like these soft zones, these soft middle curl hook zones, an under 100 passer rating is perfect for him. Now, you want to see that get better. He can get better at that. So maybe there was a little bit of a down period a little bit here, but I think easily gets back into that 90 area this year, especially being reunited with Robert Saleh, where we saw he was like defensive player of the year quality every year with Robert Saleh. From a run defense perspective, you hope that, you clean up some of the missed tackles, get better in the stops. The scheme, I think, will be a lot stronger for him this year, so he could probably get into the 90 run defense grade by the end of the season as well. His partner in crime will be D. Winters. Great coverage guy, but being a little undersized, he does lack in run defense, which is going to be a detriment here because when you're used to having Dre Greenlaw, D. Winters did a great job of filling in that role, we must say. He was thrust into that spot when Dre Greenlaw had the blown Achilles tendon in the Super Bowl, and that was pretty much the end of it. He was never going to be fully healthy last year at all. But shout out to him, he stepped up in a big way. Devondre Campbell also played there a bit. He's gone now. They have Tatum Bethune, who, again, pass coverage perspective, very good. Not going to give you anything in run defense. D. Winters needs to develop that first and second down ability, those short yardage abilities in the run game. He needs to start playing outside of his size deficit in order for this group to truly get to that top level that they need to be at. Because when you have Fred Warner, great Mike linebacker, they really, really need a second guy from a run defense perspective. From a pass coverage perspective, it's great to have D. Winters. Of course it is. But it's not super essential to have two great linebackers in coverage because D. Winters is not like this nickel or the safety. So likelihood is in these smaller sets, and again, the dime package and everything, he's coming off in these true like spread them out passing situations. So his coverage ability is kind of just out the window at that point. When they're in these smaller areas and they're a little bit bigger personnel, which allows them to be out there more, yeah, you're going to be really great in pass coverage in like those short to intermediate areas in between the hashes. You're going to force the ball to the outside on all those situations. Teams are not going to be able to throw it up the middle on you guys in those scenarios. But he's only good in those scenarios. And those scenarios can be schemed to be pretty rare and insignificant throughout a game if a team wants to. If a team has the right personnel to do that, immediately I think of a team like the Indianapolis Colts. You get into a team like that where they have Pittman, they have Downs, they have Pierce, they have Tyler Warren. You can spread this team out, force more personnel to come in, Adonai Mitchell, you can run 5 guys out there. Now you're at a situation where a guy like D. Winters has to come off the field. So he needs to step up in the run defense perspective in order for this group to be used to the capacity that Robert Saleh has used to using his linebacker groups. Whether it's Warner and Drake Greenlaw, whether it's C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams, whether it's Quincy Williams and Jamie and Sherwood. Can D. Winters step up and be that number 2 guy, that true every down purposeful number 2 guy? That's the task for this linebacker group and its development this year. Now, another group that's a real wild card is the defensive backs. It's a group that we saw great development from some young guys. We saw some great players leave. And we see some nice rotational depth here that now with Robert Saleh back, we saw what he did in developing defensive backs with the Jets. DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner. Now he gets his hands on Diamador Lenoir, Renardo Green, second-year player, Upton Stout in the slot. 3 solid guys. Now, from a depth perspective, they don't really have a whole lot going on either. This is very reminiscent of the wide receiver room in the sense that the guys that are going to be out there majority of the time, perfect. If you got to go to your bench, you're going to be sort of looking around with your, it's not going to be great. So, from a competition standpoint, these guys got to step up because they are coming in as the 20th coverage group. And now Diamador Lenoir is truly the number 1 corner here. There's no Travarius Ward there. There's no DJ Reed there. He's the number 1 guy. And he's a good number 2 guy. That's the thing. So how does he step up and be the number one guy? Because as like this number two guy, sometimes number one guy, less than a 73 passer rating, 7 pass breakups, didn't give up any touchdowns. Gave up more receptions than he probably should have. Played a lot of his snaps out of the slot, which is not going to be the case this year. Because they got Upton Stout, who is a slot guy. The true nickel slot corner. So now Deommodore Lenoir has to play outside. He has to play outside a majority of the time now. And he's probably going to have to be the guy to fall around the number one receiver unless they just split the field, him on one side, Green on the other, which I think there's a world where that happens. He's still going to have to go against some really talented guys, and they will target him, knowing that he's more of a slot guy. Knowing that outside wide receiver is not something that he necessarily lives in all that much, that he's going to have to. Like, those snaps numbers are going to be flipped by the end of the season. He'll be at 560, 570 corner snaps. He'll be at 150 slot. How does he execute in that scenario? How does he work against number one receivers? That's the question mark here. And how does Saleh negotiate where Lenoir goes and then where Renardo Green goes? Because as a rookie, Renardo Green really outperformed what people expected of him. True outside receiver, had 9 pass breakups, allowed 3 touchdowns, but did pretty well in the amount of receptions he gave up as like a true number 2 guy, number 2 outside guy. Now he's being thrust into this role again where you're not going to have a guy following around the number 1 receiver like you had before, Charvarius Ward. You're going to very likely either one of these guys will be following around somebody or they're going to have one side of the field dedicated to them. And how will he react to having to play against Marvin Harrison Jr., against Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua? A lot of talented guys coming his way. So Robert Saleh is going to have to put these guys in a position to succeed because pass breakups, they're really aggressive at the point of attack. They're really good at high pointing the ball. Weren't great at forcing turnovers. But as part of the group, they did better than expected. They just weren't these giant game breakers at corner that you're maybe used to seeing from the truly great ones. Does either one of these guys have the potential to be one of the great ones? Maybe Renardo Green, because he had such a great rookie year. That maybe Saleh can then unlock the next level for him. There's potential there. But, I mean, them sort of both sitting as these good number 2 corner types, I think is more likely. You have Upton Stout, who's great in run defense, which is why he's going to slide into that nickel role, I think, really well. From a coverage perspective, he's a nickel. It'll be really interesting to see how he matches up against some of these slot guys he's going to be facing, like Devontae Adams and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Cooper Kupp, sort of right away, like sort of getting like the best of the best in his division alone. So it could be a long year for him from that perspective, but you have Jason Pinnock who can come down, play a little bit more experience, perhaps help you out in that sense, coming over from the Giants where he was very much hit and miss. Jason Pinnock was one of those guys where he'd have just a fantastic play, and then he'll have another fantastic play, and then 4 plays in a row you'll be slapping the table going like, what the hell are you doing? He's just one of those guys. He's one of those guys, and the more he's on the field, the more you're going to be slapping the table. So how they execute with Pinnock, I think he's going to be much more of a dime defense player, because you do have Malik Mustafa, who's pretty much sliding in as your replacement for Hufanga, who I know Robert Saleh is probably very disappointed he doesn't get to work with. But you have, Jair Brown as your safety, who I think is a good starting quality safety, especially because, just play a true single high safety role, sideline to sideline speed, ball hawking ability. I think he was very good at that. When you got to drop him into the slot and into the box, I do take pause in that. I think we'll see that's what you can use Pinnock and Mustafa for. And I just like the idea of having Jair Brown be your when you're in cover 3, he's that single high safety, and for the most part, he sort of hovers around that 15 to 20 yard mark and just roams the back end and helps out on whatever side needs it. I think he's smart enough to identify the floods. I think he plays well enough in the zone. He plays aggressive at the ball point. So you got a really good player here, and I think he's the best safety that Saleh's going to have in the last couple of years, especially coming from the Jets. So there's going to be a lot of aspects of Saleh's defense that I think he's going to be really excited to use Brown in, because Brown has that cover ability that he wasn't really used to having with a lot of other players that he's had in recent history. So I think it does add another dimension to this defense. I think it does really help what they have going on with Lenoir and Green, in a sense that, you could just put either guy on either side of the field and then let the offense sort of dictate the matchups, and then that determines, where you're rolling Mustafa and Pinnock, and, where you want Jair Brown to sort of cheat to. How deep do you want him to play? Do you want to play a little bit shallower because of the matchups? Do you feel like Lenoir has a good matchup, or Green has a really good matchup most of the time? So, identify that matchup, and if it's there, you don't have to worry about it. Cheat to the other side, and we can execute at that level as well. So I think there's a lot of potential here with the guys they have to actually put together a really good defensive back performance. I just have pause in that the high upside potential just isn't there. So how good could they really be? How much could the scheme really execute to help them outplay what their individual talent level is? How well can the scheme meld them together as a singular group with the front seven going on in front of them that can hide some of these deficiencies they're going to have? Because Green doesn't have a lot of experience. He could regress, and it would be expected for him to. Sophomore slump. Upton Stout, rookie, expected to be a bit of a roller coaster. Malik Mustafa, same thing, expected to be a bit of a roller coaster, especially because he plays so aggressive. He plays so aggressive, he's going to get beat from time to time. How badly is he going to get beat? How often are you going to put him in a position where if he does get beat for being too aggressive, is it really going to hurt the team? And how much is that going to affect the psyche of the guys around you, where it's like, okay, we got Upton Stout out there, we got Mustafa up there, something's going to go wrong, I better make sure that I'm also doing their job too a little bit too, and that hurts the overall performance. You can see that happening with a lot of teams. I think this team could potentially fall into that trap. Overall, I do rank them as the 12th defense, and it's really just, they're 28th in run defense for me, 20th in pass defense, but again, Saleh has enough here to work with, and he's such a quality defensive mind, such a quality defensive strategist, that he's going to make this work. He's going to put these guys in a position to really succeed. And there's a train outside. And maybe the 49ers will become a runaway train on defense as well. Now, here's a giant advantage the 49ers have this year, is that their schedule is a cupcake schedule. They have the easiest schedule in the league coming in. So their 10.5 wins, I got it over. They don't play a single team this year that I have ranked higher than them. Not a single one. I have 10. I have 10 wins pretty much guaranteed to them out the gate. And then they get a home. They have to go on the road to the Giants. The first game of the year against Seattle on the road, sure. The 2 games against the Rams, they could split those, I think, pretty easily. So, I mean, they could be a 13-win team this year. If they stay healthy, there's no reason they shouldn't be a 13-win team, perhaps 14-win team this year with this type of schedule. Because I think they have such an advantage over Arizona and Seattle still, where really the only issue I have is when they go on the road to those teams. They do catch Houston and Tampa on the road, which is unfortunate. So, but if they caught Houston or Tampa at home, I would be probably like, that's probably going to be a win now. Because there's a slight advantage that having the home game has, but that end stretch for them, Carolina, Cleveland, Tennessee, Indianapolis, that little run there alone And the starting run, New Orleans, Arizona, Jacksonville, Arizona early in the year, when they're still trying to figure out who that number 2 receiver is, when, they're still trying to figure out maybe a little bit of the pieces of the offensive line, when that defense is still trying to get itself, cauterized a bit, you can really exploit them. So what a great year for them to draw this type of schedule. Good on them. Because if it was the opposite, then they might be in a lot more trouble. But this puts them in a position where they can gain a lot of confidence. They can beat up on some of these teams and really have improved the overall morale of the locker room, of the roster. And it could be a hell of a run for them this year in the regular season, at least. Now, when they get to the playoffs against some of these better teams, when they start playing, Detroit, Washington, Philadelphia, it could get a little stickier. But overall, they're my 9th ranked team, 8th head coach, 10th offense, 12th defense. Pretty much, dialed in right there. Everything sort of just flows nicely, doesn't it? It flows really nicely. 8, 9, 10, and 12. Because who needs 11?
There it is, my number 9 team, the San Francisco 49ers. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for watching. And thank you if you hit the subscribe button. If you didn't hit the subscribe button, what the hell, dude? Come on, man. Just hit the subscribe button. It's not gonna, I don't overload your feed. I don't overload. I just give you good quality content every now and then, just for you to enjoy. Come on, just and then hit that.